to reach for the small nuclear weapons to stop the fight in Ukraine.
President Putin has redeployed thousands of Russian troops to southern Ukraine to try to avoid a humiliating defeat. The UK's Ministry of Defence says troop build-up could be in anticipation of a Ukrainian counter-offensive or for a new assault. So what stage are we at? Let's speak to the former commander of the UK's Joint Forces Command, Sir Richard Barrons. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
What do you make of this redeployment?
So I think we need to be clear there are two big things happening right now, and the first remains in the Donbass, in the east of the country, where Russia has been grinding forward for some time, made quite a lot of progress, doesn't think it's finished yet, but is actively making plans to annex as much of the Donbass as it can, probably in September. So we'll see parts of Ukraine being declared parts of Russia. And whilst they're doing that, the Ukrainians in the south have mounted a counterattack in Kherson, which matters because it begins to threaten the fresh water supply to Crimea and the Russian hold on territory north of Crimea that connects Crimea to Russia. And because that attack has made some progress, Russia has taken troops away from the Donbass in order to try and hold up the Ukrainian counterattack. And these two things are going to play out over the next 6 weeks or so.
Right. I mean, it's worth observing at this point that we're about 6 months into this thing, and it seems like we're in it for the long haul, which has always been the prediction. But I wonder for how long redeployments and counter-offensives from the Ukrainian side can be kept up, can be sustained.
So it's a very good point, because the Ukrainian counterattack in Kherson is not the same as a general Ukrainian counteroffensive along a front line which is about 1,000 miles long. And there are three big fights going on: the Donbass, Kharkiv in the north, and Kherson in the south. And Ukraine is talking about going on the counteroffensive. And to do that, it wants to build an army, it would say about 1 million strong. And to build an army 1 million strong, you need not just willing citizens, and that's what this army will be. They will be normal citizens converted in the emergency into soldiers. So they're going to need equipment and ammunition and logistics and maintenance and a major medical system for the huge casualties that a counteroffensive is likely to lead to. Doing all of that requires time, and the winter, which starts in around November in Ukraine, will slow things up a lot. But doing that can only be done if the West provides all the stuff, all the weapons, the ammunition, the money, and many other things. And the big decision that the West has to make with Ukraine is: are we going to move ahead with building this capability, because it's going to be necessary if Russia is going to lose this war. And if we do that, this will take this war well into next year.
In your hugely helpful piece that you've written in the Sunday Times today, there's a section titled "A Threat of Catastrophe," which is always disconcerting to read, but is helpful in what it outlines, and that there will be consequences post the end of this war when the fighting stops, and also what that itself looks like. So if Putin feels like he has been defeated, actually, what happens when the fighting stops? How does Putin react?
Yeah, so there are two big problems on the horizon. One will occur whatever happens in the war, which is we have Ukraine now essentially a completely mobilized society of about 35 million people, and shortly to have, if it happens, 1 million people under arms. So when the fighting stops, there will be deep tension in the region, but the geography won't have changed. Ukraine will still be a neighbor of Russia. And you'll have a society which has to be demobilized, so people have to come out of soldiers, go back to their normal life and reintegrated, and the cost of doing that will be as expensive as, frankly, fighting the war has been so far. And people tend to forget that the aftermath of the war, of any big war, is as tricky and takes as long as the fighting itself. And then the second peril is, if Ukraine is successful, as you know, I think we should aspire to, it begins to take its country back. If Putin is still in power and senses that they're going to get rolled over, there's going to essentially be a strategic defeat for Russia. That is cataclysmic for his hold on power in Russia. And at that stage, we absolutely have to think about that under Russian military and political doctrine, they will be tempted to reach for the small nuclear weapons to stop the fight in Ukraine. And this is something we haven't seen for well over 75 years, and we don't want to see it, but we absolutely have to think about it, because in building Ukrainian army to succeed, it could take us to a point where Ukraine does succeed so well that it brings us to the brink of the use of nuclear power for the first time for 75 years.
Wow.